AITAH for not calling my wife's daughter to invite her to Christmas? I am not oop. Oop is you, throwaway not dad 1999 and you, throwaway not dad 2000. Originally posted to our AITAH. AITAH for not calling my wife's daughter to invite her to Christmas? Trigger warnings. Death of a loved one. Car accident. Verbal abuse. Estrangement. Less than. Original post December 20th, 2023. I think I need to start by saying this is a throwaway account. Christy says, Jane uses Reddit. I, 63M. Lost my wife. Beth 60F at the time. 3 years ago. We had been together for 30 years. When I met my wife she was already a widow. Her first husband had died in a car accident. She had a daughter, Jane 43F, who was 6 at the time her father passed. We married when Jane was about 10 years old. When I came into Jane's life, I had no idea how to be a parent to her. I expressed my fears to Beth and she said to just let her take the lead. I talked with Jane and told her that I knew I could never replace her dad and was not trying to. However, I would be willing to do all the dad stuff that her dad wasn't around to do if she wanted. I drove her to practices, attended every performance, stayed up late to help her study for math tests, taught her to drive and to shoot, shared my love of fantasy literature and Star Trek. Our relationship was always hot and cold though. While she seemed happy, I was never dad, or stepdad, or even Uncle Sam. I was always just Sam. Beth and I had a son, Tom 32M, and a daughter, Christy 29F. Jane has a reasonable relationship with her half-siblings considering their age difference. A year or so after Christy was born, Jane became sullen and despondent. After talking with Beth, I offered to adopt Jane. Jane did not take this well and I never brought it up again. I was the main disciplinarian parent in our household and while none of the kids were troublemakers, they all did things that got them grounded or their privileges with our cars taken away. I think Jane resented this as well. When Jane graduated high school, each student was able to purchase 2 tickets to the ceremony. Jane purchased 2 tickets and I thought I would be attending. But the week of the ceremony Beth told me that Jane wanted to use her second seat to memorialize her father. I was hurt, but I understood. She put a picture of him on the empty chair next to her mom. I think it also hurt Beth as well. Jane was an excellent student, and she got some good scholarships. And I paid the remainder of her costs to go to college. I did get to see that graduation. When Jane got married, Beth and I were not able to pay for the entirety of her wedding. We paid about half. She had her father's younger brother walk her down the aisle. She would spend a week or 2 during the summer with her father's family. At the reception my wife was again seated next to an empty chair to memorialize Jane's father. I was not given a seat with Beth at the family table. And honestly, I don't remember where I was supposed to be because I spent my time at the bar or standing behind Beth, who was having a very hard time. However, it was a lovely wedding and once the dancing started and everybody was out of their seats I stopped worrying about where I was supposed to be. When Jane had her first kid, Beth and I were overjoyed. However, I soon learned that while my wife was going to be Gram, I was not going to be Grandpa, but still just Sam. I am Sam to both her children. This was again something that hurt. And when Tom had his first child he asked if I wanted to be Granddad or Sam to his kids and I jumped at getting to be Grandpa. Jane ended up getting divorced about 4 years ago. Shortly before Beth was diagnosed with cancer, she and her kids moved in with us and we helped her with her lawyer until everything was finalized. During my wife's last year, Jane was with us all the time. It was a huge help to both Beth and I. After Beth passed, I was a wreck and mostly useless. It wasn't right, but Jane ended up doing most of the funeral preparation. I am very grateful for the help she provided. When Jane's father had died, his mother had helped with the funeral expenses and had purchased a double plot. When Jane prepared the funeral, she organized everything so that Beth would be buried next to Jane's father, her first husband. I was shocked and felt that this was done somewhat behind my back. My wife had never told me of this, but Jane assured me that this was what Beth would have wanted. I talked with Tom and Christy, and they know I intend to be cremated. Because of that, they thought that this was reasonable, and the plot was already paid for. At the memorial service, Jane was rightfully upset. She told many of the other mourners that she was now orphaned and that she and her 2 kids had no close family left. This upset Tom and Christy a lot, but I tried to explain that it was different for Jane. I talked with Jane during the memorial and told her that she does have a family that will welcome her if she wants it. She thanked me and was polite. I have not really talked with Jane since the memorial. The first year I invited Jane to all the family get-togethers just like before. Even though Tom and Christy were angry with her, I left her voicemails asking how she was doing, how her kids are. However, the last couple of years I have stopped because I never get any response. I still send her and her kids gifts for their birthdays and Christmas. I just don't actively reach out. One of the last voicemails I left, I told her that all she needed to do was call and I would help her with all that information. Here is where I might be the AH. My daughter Christy is getting married next year. She reached out to Jane in the past few months and has been working on reconciling with her. Additionally, Jane's ex lives in a different state and her kids will be gone for most of the holidays. Jane has told Christy about how alone she is feeling. Christy called me and asked me to invite Jane to my house for Christmas. Christy and her fiancé will be there along with Tom and his family. I told Christy that Jane knows she is always invited. Christy says that Jane won't come if I don't call and ask her to come. I told Christy that she could invite Jane, or she could tell Jane to call me. Christy says I am being an AH for not calling Jane. I talked with my son Tom, and he says he is tired of the rest of us having to beg Jane to be part of our family. I love Jane. She is my daughter. But after so much, I just feel like the only way this will work is if she takes the first steps. So, am I the AH for not calling my wife's daughter to invite her to Christmas? Jane, if you see this, just call. Edit. I am really astounded by all the comments. I thought I would just get a few, but there are too many to answer them all. I do feel the need to clear some things up though. I tried to be the best parent I could be to Jane. With Beth's help, I never wanted her to feel like our family was not also her family or that her family had been replaced. I never felt like an ATM machine. I paid less than half of Jane's schooling because of her scholarships. I did what we could for her wedding. And yes, I was pissed about the seating and who got to walk her down the aisle. But Beth reminded me it was her day, not mine. I will be paying for a larger share of Christy's wedding than I did Jane's because my financial situation is different now. But Christy has asked for something I think her mom would have fought with her over already. But that is a story for another post. I don't think I did anything that would make Jane resent me, besides marrying her mom. However, Jane has, except for a few occasions, always been polite and friendly to me. Maybe I shouldn't have put the wedding stuff in the post at all. But she did have a, not father-daughter, dance with me at her wedding. When Beth passed, Jane told me that her mother was amazingly lucky to have found true love twice in one lifetime. When I offered to adopt Jane, it went very badly. Beth and I had sat her down and made the offer. We thought that after the birth of Christy she was feeling left out. It backfired horribly. Jane said she didn't want my stupid thing name. I tried to explain that she wouldn't need to change her name, but she started screaming at me that she didn't want my stupid Fing name, family or anything else. Both Beth and I told her that this response was completely unacceptable, but she kept saying nasty things that teenagers say to both me and Beth. I told her that her behavior was totally unacceptable, and since her mom had lots of class and manners, that this behavior must come from her stupid Fing father's family. Beth told me that I wasn't helping and I left while she talked with Jane. A couple of days later, Jane asked to talk with Beth and I privately. She said wanted to move in with her uncle. I figured this was a hollow threat from a teenager since that uncle lived 2 states over and her life and friends were all where we lived. I said something like, well, if that's how you feel, you and your mom work it out and I will make it happen. I then left. Jane didn't move out. I did tell her that I was glad she chose to stay with us. Our relationship did get better, but never substantially improved after that point. So I am not a saint. I am human. I did my best. AITAH has no consensus bot, but based on the comments, OOP was NTA. Relevant comments. T and Tomes. NTA, and I'd leave it. You have spent the past 35 years being the bigger person here. Understandable when she was a child and she chose your role in her life. But as an adult, she is fine taking your money but then treating you like an outsider. If I, with my spouse, had paid for half of her wedding but then wasn't given a seat with my spouse, or with the family, I'd have said enough. She then, when you were grieving and at your most vulnerable, had your wife buried somewhere without your input? All of these actions are to hurt you and are, frankly, fairly despicable. You have been more than kind. It's exhausting just to read this and see how much you have done. I agree with your son. You have set yourself and your whole world on fire to keep this ungrateful warm, and still left the door open. It's on her now. Oop. I was not at a kiddie table. Just not at the table with the mother and father of the bride and groom and the grandparents. Like I said, I mostly just stayed near Beth anyway. My wife and I had talked, and had discussed mixing our ashes and both being cremated. However, we had been to her husband's gravesite multiple times over the years. Thinking back, it's pretty clearly got a grave-sized empty space between it and the next marker. I really did let the kids do mostly whatever and signed whatever they stuck in front of me. VLD Racer 70. The only thing as an outsider I think should have been done was take Jane to therapy. Sounds like Jane wants everything her way when she wants it. Oop. Getting therapy was different in the 90s. I know Beth got her some help after her dad passed, but long term it was just not as available as now. It also would have meant taking her out of classes and activities a lot, and people told us, mostly Beth, that keeping her busy was the best thing. And NBSP. Update December 31st, 2023. Welp. It looks like I didn't register my throwaway account properly and I can't get back into the previous one. Here is a link to the first post. https www.reddit.com/r/a.i.t.a.h/comments/18n1jb6/AITAH for not calling my wife's daughter to invite /UTM source equals share and UTM medium equals web 2x and context equals 3. So, Christmas has come and gone. For those interested, here is an update. TLDR at the bottom, as I guess it's a requirement. Most people said it was time for Jane to face the consequences of her actions. Did Jane deserve to spend Christmas alone? Perhaps. But I didn't want my girl to be alone or sad when I could do something about it. So, I called and once again got sent to voicemail. I left a message saying that I didn't know what her plans were, but that she should know that she is always welcome at our house. I figured that would be it. And I could tell Christy that I tried. On Saturday I got a call from Jane. She seemed very down. She told me the same things I had heard from Christy. Her kids would be out of state with her ex for Christmas and New Year's. She was feeling very alone. I told her that she is always welcome to come celebrate with her brother and sister and myself. She said that sounded really good and she would like that. Jane, Christy, and her fiancé, John, because I am lazy, spent Christmas Eve with me. It was really nice. Jane was very sweet to everyone. People were so busy attacking Jane before, and my post maybe was not fair to her. But Jane can be an incredibly caring person. Jane seemed a little on edge at first, but as the evening went on she became more at ease. We watched A Muppet Christmas Carol, just like when my kids were younger. After my phone call with Jane, I had found Tom, Christy, and Jane's old stockings. There was not a lot of time, but I got some candy, a book, and a couple of gift cards for Jane, Christy, and John. On Christmas morning all three were a bit surprised to find that they had stockings filled with goodies and called me a jerk for not telling them beforehand so that they could make sure I had one, too. I said I was not involved and you can't call Santa a jerk or you get nothing, just like me. Tom and his family came over on Christmas Day. Jane practically knows more about what is going on with Tom's kids than I do because she is very active on Facebook. Jane's gifts to everyone, well, everyone save John, were very thoughtful. Jane is great with kids. She is a teacher, and Tom's kids really enjoy their aunt, although they did ask where their cousins were, which made Jane a bit sad. Jane and Christy made our Christmas dinner, and seeing giggling like schoolgirls in the kitchen together reminded me Christmas long ago when Christy was 7 or 8. Jane was home from college and Jane, Beth, and Christy were all working in the kitchen. Christy was standing on a chair and Jane was teaching her all our secret family recipes. Christy adored Jane in the way that little kids adore adults who are not their parents. Jane was just so patient and kind to her little sister. I remember Beth, Jane, and Christy telling Tom and I that stinky boys need to set the table. Seeing Jane and Christy together got me thinking about Beth, and I had to go find a quiet spot to compose myself. Tom found me in my office. He said that Jane told him that I called her. He said that he was glad I did, that he was not sure he would have been willing or able to make the call. I told him I bet if it was his kid he would have. That's probably enough of my family Christmas. I know that the real update is, did I talk with Jane? Tom and his family went home because his kids wanted to play with their new toys. Christy and John left to meet John's family for a late Christmas meal and get together. As Christy was leaving, she gave me a hug and told me, "Merry Christmas, Daddy." When I turned around and saw Jane, I could see dread on her face. After everyone had left, Jane asked to talk with me. We had a long conversation and I am going to hit the important parts. Jane said she was very thankful to be invited for Christmas. She told me that when she started dating after her divorce, because of her age, she met a lot of guys who had older kids like her own. Many didn't think trying to blend families with older kids was a good idea. I guess they figured the kids would be out of the house soon, and they had co-parenting relationships that worked for them. However, Jane has her kids pretty much all the time. A large factor in her divorce had been that her husband had a view that his job was more important than their kids' lives. She wanted to be with somebody who would show her kids, especially her son, that family is not just a thing women care about. Apparently, as her longest relationship was spiraling, she had an argument with her boyfriend where she said something like, and remember, I am paraphrasing a story she told me, "What's so hard about stepping up and being a good dad? My stepdad was able to do it and he didn't have any kids of his own when he married my mom, too." Which said boyfriend said something like, "You mean the guy you treat like S and your kids treat him badly too. Quote, she says that after that fight, or relationship or whatever, she kind of started thinking about our relationship, things I had done for her, and that she had done as well. She told me she feels embarrassed and ashamed, that she didn't know how to even start to fix anything, and she thought Tom and Christy and I were mad at her. Jane asked me if we could have a relationship like I have with Christy and Tom. I told her that I cannot give her a replica of my relationship with Christy, that none of us can change the past. I told her that for me, nothing has changed from when the afternoon at the park where I told her that I would be willing to do all the things her dad was not around to do. I will always be as much her dad as she wants. Jane was crying by this point, and I held her. She started sobbing harder and saying she was sorry. I told her that I know, and that everything is okay. In the middle of this, something happened that I have waited a very long time to hear. The sobs of, "I'm sorry," became, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." Well, one apology and a good cry doesn't change a person. The next morning I was mostly back to being Sam, but there were a few dads, and even one daddy, sprinkled in. We will see. Some other things I am guessing people will want to know. We did talk about her mom's funeral. She said that she didn't mean to do anything secretive. By using the plot that was paid for, they saved on some costs and were able to get an encasement as well. The encasement should make it possible to have my cremains interred with my wife. Also, I guess a down payment has been made towards a headstone for me that can be integrated with my wife's. Finally, her youngest was apparently upset that Tom's oldest called me Grandpa all the time at the funeral, and thought that it meant I liked Tom's son more than him. That was years ago now, but she said she will be bringing it up, the Grandpa Sam situation, with her kids. I said I would like that. In all of this, Jane never tried to say that it was her father's brother or any of the rest of her father's family who didn't like me or made her act like she did. There was no evil outside influence, just a scared girl who wishes she could have done some things differently. I know many people said that she wouldn't really change. I know change is very hard. Maybe after the holidays everything will just go back to being like it was. However, even if that's what happens, I at least got one Christmas day when Jane wanted me to be her dad. Also, Jane knows I am posting this and said it was okay. TLDR. I called her. She came. Christmas was good. We cried. I got to be dad. We will see if things improve. An NBSP. # this is a repost sub. I am not oop. Shout out to the former boyfriend that forced Jane to take a good look in the mirror. Wow, a semi-happy ending and people seeing the mistakes of their pasts. Color me Reddit shocked. I at least got one Christmas day when Jane wanted me to be her dad. Ow ow. My feelings. Ow. Oop deserves so much more than just one Christmas. One of the few times I've seen, I lost my throwaway and had to make a new one, and believe the update is genuine. There's a distinct writing style. No Reddit cliches. No escalation. And overall a very human interaction. I'm happy for Oop. I'm glad things seem to be on the mend. I think that the fact that Jane was in the position that her mom was in gives her a lot of insight. And I don't think the outcome would have been the same if her ex-boyfriend hadn't thrown those words in her face. I feel like when someone from an objective standpoint tells you you're acting a mess, it sinks in. After our mother passed away, my sister pulled away from our father and me completely, basically never calling me or responding to my texts and only calling our father if she needs something from him. There comes a point when you are just done. Believe me, this year, I didn't even get a reply to my email asking her what she would like for Christmas, and when I Phoned her on her birthday. It was the most awkward 5-minute call because she only gave super short answers and didn't engage in any real conversation. And it's sad. It would be great if OOP's patience would finally pay off and Jane truly changed. But I am not sure how likely it is. Holidays like Christmas and the New Year always make people sentimental and wanting to start the New Year with change and making things better, and Jane was especially suffering this year. But once those days are over, everyday life tends to sweep all those wishes for change away. There is comfort in what you have, simply because it's already there. Change, even good change, is hard to maintain and requires work. And that's what Jane has so far not done. Work. She has reaped what Oop and her sister have offered to her. But there has been nothing happening from her own side yet. She happily took the offered stuff. But it'll remain to be seen if she is willing to now reciprocate and put in work of her own to establish and better her connection with her family. It also sounds like she might turn into someone who seeks her family when she has no or only a failing relationship on her own. But once she is in a happy relationship, Oop might get forgotten again. Praise the ex-boyfriend who told Jane the truth. Self-reflection, communication, and a family that didn't try to erase deceased parents or force relationships. It's a Christmas miracle. And now this has made me cry. I never got to call my dad to his face or ask him to adopt me before he died. He was 46. I thought I'd have more time. Good to see that things ended semi-happy and nothing terrible happened. Wish everyone around for the best. Like, I know it's a positive update and all, but man, I don't know how he'll be able to let go of all the pain. I feel so bad for him. To which said boyfriend said something like, "You mean the guy you treat like S and your kids treat him badly too?" Quote, boom. Roasted. Ha 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 ha. The guy is spot on. Jane got better than she deserved. Obviously, as a kid it's hard to control your emotions and romanticize your first parent. But she's in her 40s now. And you'd think by the time she became an adult with her own children, she could do a bit of self-reflection and see that Oop really stepped up. Oof, my face is raining. This is unconditional love. No matter, he was her dad. So glad she finally saw what she was missing. I'm not crying, you're crying. Step parenting is hard, and sometimes playing the long game pays off. The cemetery arrangements sent me over the edge into crybaby territory. I'm glad that ended well. I suspect Jane had a lot of guilt related to her dad's passing, and that's why she stayed distant. She may have felt it would betray her dead dad if she moved on or if she let herself be adopted. 10 is a really impressionable age to go through getting a new family and watching your mom get married again and have new kids. It's kind of messed up that it took her so long to come around, but I hope it sticks. Not really related. But wow, it's weird how grief can hit. I got to the end and read the phrase, Grandpa Sam, and got hit with a wave. Despite me losing my Grandpa Sam 20 years ago, he really does sound like a wonderful father and grandfather. And I hope he is as loved as my grandpa was. Honestly, I'm sure those kids were confused at calling a dude their cousins called Grandpa his frickin' name. The same guy their aunts, uncle called Dad. I'm just imagining my little brain, who honestly still struggles to know what to call my godparent's wife. Call godparent, uncle, but his wife has been, Jess. 'Cause she never seemed all that good with kids. And didn't seem to want to be. Trying to figure out, okay, so if mom's siblings are calling this guy, and their kids are calling him, then why are we? Quote. If you enjoyed this video, Please check out our playlists full of similar content. AITAH is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.